Okay, so good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Wen-Jay. She is the founder and CEO of Local Roots in New York City. Local Roots is a community driven and uh, minority owned company building a movement towards supporting a regenerative community. And we're so pleased to have you here, Wen-Jay. Welcome.
I love that introduction. I feel like it's the most concise that someone's given me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I try. Many times I actually ask guests to introduce themselves because I like to hear what guests have to say, but I want to give people a kind of the 360 view. So as we dip into the conversation, they know what we're talking about. And we can continue by asking you more in-depth questions to learn, to go deeper and learn more about your company and why you started it, what's changed, how you're pivoting, if you're pivoting, and what people can expect for the future. Because I know that businesses, when we start them as an entrepreneur, we have to be open to change.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important to share those stories and talk about how the environment, the world, education supports us to create change for the better, right? And to be able to say it's not that we didn't succeed at what we were doing. It's not that it wasn't right. It was right in that moment, but now we've learned more.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to hear your story one day. So talk to me, tell me about Local Roots and what inspired you to launch that.
So I started Local Roots in 2011. It has been for the past nearly 14 years, essentially like a modernized CSA. So that stands for Community Supported Agriculture. If people don't know, it's essentially like a subscription based farmers market. And my goal was really to make the access in New York to the best quality ingredients from local farms easier, more convenient, more fun, more playful. At that time in 2011, this was not like a thing people did really. There was a very small niche of people that, went to the farmers markets or joined CSAs. And me, as someone who did not look like most of the people that were in those areas, in that community, it was also important for me to show people like, if you want to eat well and healthy and organic and local, it doesn't matter like what you look like. Um, so that's how I started. That's why I started Local Roots essentially. And essentially it was also because my dream job, which was to create CSAs for my life, for a living, did not exist anywhere in the world. And the only way I could have my dream job was essentially just to make it my own and start my own business. So that's really where and why I started my company. And it wasn't really an idea to start a business. Like, I knew that I wanted to be a small business instead of a nonprofit. And the reason for that was that I had been at a nonprofit previously through AmeriCorps. And, like through a nonprofit, it is like a little bit, um, the process is like a little slower, I think. You have to go through the board, you have to get things approved a lot more. Um, and for me, I like to make like quick change. So to me, it was important to be a small business and also like not depend completely on donors and grants. So that's like why I chose as a small business instead of a nonprofit. But even though I had like an LLC name and I filed as an LLC, I really didn't process that it was a business until like 4 years in. And even now, it's kind of funny to think about, like, because I'm not a business person, to consider this a business. It really does feel like a movement that needs to make money to keep it funded.
And when you started this, it sounds like, you didn't see people that looked like yourself. It wasn't available, and it was something that you really wanted to create on a personal level. And what was your process in terms of going out there to see how this idea resonated with other folks? What was the feedback you got?
I didn't do any surveys like that. I didn't even think about it, honestly. I didn't think, like, are people gonna like this? I didn't once question it. It was like you said, like, I wanted access to better quality food. I wanted New Yorkers to have better access to quality food. There weren't enough people that looked like me that felt comfortable in those spaces at the time. Um, and I think, there's a quote that David Chang had said in a book, and also that he also, I think, read through a Steve Martin quote, was that if I knew how hard it was going to be, I never would have done it. So, like, I didn't really put that much thought into it in the beginning. I just did it because I wanted to do it. And also, I was really missing community. Like, I was playing in a lot of underground music scenes, and that's where my community was built in New York City. And when gentrification happened, a lot of those businesses, a lot of those establishments that hosted these underground music concerts closed down. I didn't have community. So it really was something I was just very intrinsically and innately drawn to. I was also at an age where I felt like I was 25, I think. So like I had all the time in the world. I didn't like think about it. But what I did was I started my LLC, came up with a business name with some friends, and very grassroots. I put flyers everywhere. I spent, and it wasn't like, are you interested in this? It was like, we're open for business. Join the CSA. I put flyers up like every single day for years throughout the neighborhoods. I would have my friend who worked at her office, like she would just print out hundreds of flyers for me for free, so I didn't pay for anything. The only thing I was paying for was tape and my time. And I learned that from like playing in a band, like if you want to promote your music, again, this is like really hard to imagine because of how intense social media is now. But back then, which wasn't that long ago, in 2011, you literally advertised your band's show like with a flyer, right? Or maybe like a MySpace post, but that was pretty much it. So that's how that's the only way I knew how to advertise. And that's really the only way to advertise outside of like putting a newspaper ad out.
Right. And so it seems like those days of putting up flyers almost seems like it seems like a distant memory in this moment in time with everything that's going on with social media. How does that translate today? Does it still work the same way, or have you had to evolve with social media taking such a large presence?
Yeah, I really think flyers is like a lost art form. I still love going to a cafe and like looking at the community board because it does make it feel more of a community when you see like this person's advertising piano lessons, this person can walk your dog. Um, so we still do flyers. I still think they're important because I think people are tired of seeing things on their phone, and it is just like another way of seeing something. But I've honestly never been big into ads. I don't really know if like the little money I would put into it would actually be effective. So I've maybe have made like one Instagram ad in 14 years. I maybe have boosted a post like 5 times and I put like $20 into it. Um, I think the way that I use social media is really just like education, right? So it's like, this is what this vegetable looks like, and this is what it tastes like, or here's how to cook this thing, or this is what your farm looks like, or here's on my own personal page, it's very much like, here's this food topic that when I tell you about it, it'll help you feel more connected to your food or creates more transparency around the products at the grocery store that you're looking at. So I use social media as a way of education,
Mhm.
which I think is also a tool of marketing in the end.
And
But
I
I
think that's
still like,
really big now. Like people are choosing to educate as opposed to do traditional advertising.
yeah, and the problem with that though is like I don't know how much research people do before they educate people.
Right.
Like there's so much misinformation on the internet that it dilutes the people who are really trying to have an authentic voice, and that I think is a dangerous thing. Um, Instagram, I think when it first started was an amazing tool for small businesses. Now I actually don't think it's effective. I think it creates I don't know, I think it creates a world where people value like the instant gratification of an Instagram post versus the quality of a product or service.
Hmm.
And that I think is a kind of like creates a downfall of small businesses or businesses in general.
Yeah. So now, with that being said, would you say that education is at the forefront of your marketing initiatives as a way to educate and sell and develop community?
It is. And I don't know if that's like technically from a business standpoint the most effective way, but being seen as like a company that people can trust and people viewing me as an expert in my field is very important to me because I don't ever cut corners for money. I will always be authentic to like the kinds of farms we work with, the ways that we speak with our customers. So that reputation is really important to me, and that education to me is very connected to that reputation. Um, and in the end, it's like, again, like not the most business savvy part of what I do, but in the end, I sell a product that feels kind of weird to charge people for. Like theoretically, everyone should have access to really high quality, local, clean, regeneratively grown ingredients. The government should make it a way for that to be free. That will never happen. But so, in that moralistic value of what I believe in, I'd rather have people have the knowledge and the education around how to make better food choices, even if it's not buying products from local roots, especially because we are hyper local and we only serve the New York City demographic, the region. You know, I think it does a disservice to the world if someone from California or Seattle doesn't have that knowledge just because they're not a consumer of ours.
Right. How far out do you go to the farmers? So what's the radius to which you work within?
Usually within 2 hours of New York.
And so when people order these boxes, given I would imagine, is it seasonal? It's seasonal, right?
It goes all year round and everything's based on the seasons.
Okay. And so do people know what they want, what they're getting? Is it a surprise? Can you choose? How customizable are they?
It's kind of like a hybrid. So meaning like you can customize the categories of food, meaning like vegetables, mushrooms, fruit. But you can't customize what you're getting in that selection. So if it's vegetables, I'm going to be curating. I'm the one that personally curates what 5 items you're getting from the farm that week and which kind of mushrooms you're getting that week. But I know I put a lot of thought into how to curate that for people.
So how do you choose those 5 items? What are your benchmarks or your parameters for making that choice?
I think about it from the standpoint of a home cook in New York. So, can this fit in my fridge? Because we have small fridges and kitchens in New York. Um, and then a balance of things like root vegetables, leafy greens, alliums like onions and garlic, and color because like the different colors have different nutrients in it. So if we can diversify the colors that we're giving purple carrots to obviously like rainbow Swiss chard, you're also able to provide something that's more nutritious to the consumer.
Right. And so are people ordering this weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly?
So people get their local roots harvest box every single week, and they can put it on hold whenever they want. So, New Yorkers are often traveling, or they have a 1 week where they know they're super busy at work. They can put their order on hold, which is a great thing because, with the original CSA model, one restriction is that it is a commitment and there's no way to put that thing on hold. So if you can't pick up if your CSA box, you usually just have a neighbor pick it up for you and you just donate it, one of those two options. But this gives people more flexibility in terms of that subscription model.
And how accessible are they to pick up? I mean, it's not delivery, you're saying, so it's not going to end up at my apartment on 60 Wall Street or whatever.
Right. So it could. So if you were a consumer, you go through our website, you select which kind of harvest club box you want. I want veggies and fruit. I want veggies, fruit, and mushrooms. And then you can check out opting either home delivery or pickup. So home delivery, there is a charge. We're not an Amazon. People should remember that. We are a small business. We're not going to do free delivery. That's not actually economical for any small business. Um, it's also not economical for Amazon, just so we remember. They're just losing a lot of money intentionally for that. Um, Or you can do pickup, which is free. So like we have a couple of pickup locations in different bars and cafes throughout New York City. So say you would go to like the local coffee shop you partner with, and you'd pick up your box there. The reason why we partner with neighborhood bars and cafes is one, to support those small businesses, but it's also to create a different experience in grocery shopping. So instead of, I used to have a CSA I picked up at a church, but you can't really talk to people at a church because it's a church. You feel like you have to be quiet. So I wanted to pick a place that was already a social setting for people, that was part of their weekly lifestyle, and that's where you can pick up your food. And then we also sometimes offer recipes, so we'll give you ideas of what to cook. Or I handle the Instagram, so like if you're like, what is this thing? And I don't know how to use it, I'll like message you back some ideas.
So as you were building this business, when you first kicked it off, you said there weren't CSAs were not really a thing there. It was not quite, the same as it is today. How have you seen the industry grow and your role in it?
Yeah, just to clarify, like CSAs were introduced to New York City, or introduced to America, I think to Boston, in Massachusetts. They first came to Massachusetts in the 80s. And so we have had CSAs in New York for a while. It's more that it is very much it used to be very much a subculture. Um, there weren't as many people that were like younger or even minorities, being feeling, I think, approachable in those communities. Um, but local and organic was not really a thing, meaning like you couldn't just go to the grocery store and find these products there. There wasn't a Whole Foods in every borough, and even Whole Foods, like, it was, I mean, that's when it was not owned by Amazon, but yeah, like, so buying like local ingredients, thinking about organic was not as commonplace in people's mind. And it's really crazy. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, who I know through like the local food world. And we were just kind of talking about how much he was reminding me of like how much it has changed and how different it was when I started this, and which is the reason why I even started my company, and how much, how I probably had a hand in changing the industry. Um, I don't, I'm not someone very much to like have an ego or brag about what I have accomplished, but all I know is that this was not a thing most people thought about, and now it is. And we've had like thousands of customers come through local routes. Um, and all those people, you know, we were essentially like, some of them, like their first introduction to the worlds of local food. Many of them know what the word regenerative is because I talk about it all the time. A lot of the education I've had customers for 14 years, every single week as customers, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember when you like talked about making a veggie scrap broth 6 years ago, and I still do that. I remember even like a friend that worked at like a large fashion brand was telling me, we were in a meeting and we had a mood board of how we want the brand to be for the next year, and your brand was actually, Local Roots is actually up there, like part of the mood board, which is like amazing to hear. I was like, are you sure that was me? But yeah, I think it is cool to think about how my mission to like make this more commonplace has been accomplished after 14 years. And it's this weird, like, it's this kind of funny catch 22, right? Like, you helped grow the movement. I feel like part of me is like, it's not just selling the organic local food, it's also making it fun, it's making it sexy, it's like making it playful where it is part of your social life. And now I think organic and local is like that. Um, and yeah, so it's like you create the world where it's more mainstream, but that also means you're essentially creating your own competitors. And so now, like, we're in a place where like I don't want to have to compete with a Whole Foods, which is impossible.
And so, what role do you think farmers markets play for you?
I love farmers markets. I think I view our businesses to actually to be, so I think they complement each other, meaning like a lot of farmers will diversify the way they sell their vegetables or food, right? So like farmers markets are great because you can have that direct connection with your own consumers. It's every single week normally. But in a farmers market situation, if it's raining that day, no one shows up. And then you have all this food waste. Or people will still select and hand like select the things they want, and they probably always pick the most familiar things. And so if you have a massive crop of like rutabaga, and most people don't know how to cook rutabaga in New York, you're gonna be wasting a lot of that product. So I view farmers markets, and it's kind of funny because I view them being convenient in different ways. So a farmers market is very convenient in the sense of like you can pick what you want. You have a larger selection of farmers to talk to. You have like a larger window, right? Like it's usually from like the morning until like whatever 3 p.m. With local roots and like the CSA model, the reason why I think it's convenient is that someone's hand curating it for you, so you don't have to think about what you're going to buy. I like that it's like diverse. It's different items every single week, so it is like forces you to diversify your nutrients and what you're cooking every single week. So I cook things based off of what's in season, and I never cook things based off of a recipe. So I'll never like go buy a vegetable just for my recipe. It's like, all right, I have these items in my fridge from the farmers. I want to make something with this. I find that to me to be more convenient the way I cook. And yeah, and like it's within your schedule. You're not having to take the subway to maybe Union Square to the farmers market. I can go 2 blocks down to my bar, grab a drink with a friend, and also pick up my vegetables and my fruits and my meats and my cheese. And also, like, I'm not at all throwing shade to farmers markets. It is just good to think about how not every vendor at a farmers market is organic or is 100% grass fed. There's a lots of different kinds of growing practices happening at the farmers market. So unless you're doing your own research and unless you know what to look for, it's just more effort I think versus like I spend so much time for local roots finding farmers that really hit the highest kind of sustainability growing practices on a farm.
If you look at other cities, right? Unique. New York is unique, right? Because you want to stay within your area when you're going grocery shopping. I don't want to schlep all the way to the Upper East Side to go get something or the Upper West Side. A, it could take you like an hour, right? It's not convenient. You got to carry it in a bag. I mean, I remember having a shopping cart, but that was only to go like a block or two, right? You remember those little carts for your groceries? And I think about where I live today. I live in Marin County, where there is a farmer's market every single day of the week in one of the towns here locally, which is not something that every county has. So it gives us unusual access. And I remember living in New York where I would go to the Union Square market because I lived near Union Square and I would pick up my things and I had my vendors and then I would do the rest from, oh my God, Fresh Direct. I'm like going back a while. Um, but you didn't have that same connection with the farmers and the ranchers that you do, or even the connection like you're providing. And it doesn't give you the way to focus on locally sourced, locally grown products. I remember it really just being about whatever I wanted to eat, I would make because it's always available. But I think this really supports a more regenerative, organic, local culture. So, and I think you really did have a hand in building that in New York area because I moved out here and it was like second nature. But back then, when I lived in New York, it was kind of farmers markets. There's one on the Upper West Side. There was one in Union Square. They were there. They weren't there, kind of thing. Um, and I really think the movement and the community has really connected with what you and others have brought to the community and allowed us to change the narrative and really empower people to make more informed choices.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. When you're talking about that, I was thinking about how, when I keep talking about people getting products that they wouldn't normally pick out, like the rutabaga, right? it's not just that it's better for you nutritionally to diversify what you're eating, it's better nutritionally for the farm also. So if a farmer knows that, like, regenerative, organic, local vegetables, right? Part of growing those growing practices means they have diverse crops growing on a farm. The different kinds of vegetables, varieties, the different kinds of root systems will all affect and enhance the soil nutrition, which makes your vegetable more nutritious and more flavorful. Now, imagine if, like, you have to grow diverse vegetables and crops, but you can't sell half of them because they're just not popular. Then you're wasting so much money. But in the world of a CSA, you're able to educate people and introduce people to these varieties that help a farm, and you would never probably think to buy it yourself. But then you're like, oh my God, I love Romanesco. This is the coolest vegetable. I love rutabaga. It's like a potato. And I do have a lot of customers in the beginning that were really like, this reminds me so much. Like, I'm so happy you guys exist in New York. I just moved here. This reminds me so much of California, upstate New York, Europe. And I can't find anything else like this in New York. And I think that is really cool. And like, and now that we do home delivery, it is literally like you don't have to even leave your door and you get everything sent to you.
So I'd love to go back to the community that you've built. And maybe if you could, maybe give us like three things, three ideas for those founders tuning in that would really be useful for them as they're trying to build their community. Because building community is really challenging. And you've done such a great job. So if you could just maybe share a few things.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no formula for building community. And if you think about it just in the sense of, I need to build community to have a good business, it's just never going to work. It's a very slow process. But a lot of people, I think, were loyal customers and are loyal customers to me for 14 years every week. And I think a lot of that's the connection they have to me. It's like, I support this business because I support the business owner. And that really comes down to, like, for the first like 10 years or so, I was at every local roots pickup, meaning like I greeted every single customer every single week in every neighborhood we were in every single borough we were in. Um, when we first started doing home deliveries, I was the one to deliver them. So I know everyone's schedule in terms of like when they're coming back from, if they're gonna open the door and like their yoga pants because they just came back from yoga class, or like they just came back from work. And it really is just like thinking about your consumers as your friends, right? Like checking in on them, remembering things like, how was that work meeting you had last week? We were talking about it. It's just having a genuine interest in your consumers, and it's not this transactional experience. And that to me is the best way to build community.
I mean, because it becomes personal then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like you. I want to support you. I like your choices. I like how you educate me. I like the products you bring. I think it's the intersection of you and your products and where they come together because they've now become to trust you for picking the right things and giving them the information and establishing a rapport. And
Mm-hmm.
now it feels like it's attainable and you're accessible as is the food.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Exactly.
the winning combination, right? So as we look forward, because that was like the last 13 years, where are you today with the business? And what are you looking to do as you see the industry changing?
Yeah, I mean, the industry has changed so much, and not just the food industry and not just organic industry, but the industry of just being a business has changed so much, um, that I am moving away from that farm box CSA program we've been doing for 14 years. And it feels as if we're almost closing the company down and then letting it regrow into something else. So there's definitely a lot of transition happening at Local Roots, but the one thing that will always stay the same is that focus on whatever I'm doing, whatever Local Roots is doing, is always going to be focused around connecting people closer to their food, creating more transparency around food, and really empowering people and getting them excited about a local food system.
So what impacted you to make this change, to close that down and now look for a new way to evolve?
A more thorough answer is on my Instagram, but I will mention a couple things from that post I made on Instagram. One thing is the overhead and the expenses post pandemic are just so high. Like, I have survived so many things as a business owner. From day one, we had Hurricane Irene hit upstate New York, which had a lot of farmers. There's just been there's always something big to get over. We hustled and like worked our asses off during the pandemic, which was the hardest time as a business and a very hard time as essential workers also, and we survived that. And then post pandemic is a world that a lot of people probably can't understand that it's how different it is unless you're probably a business owner. Everything is higher, like insurance rates are higher, obviously rent always increases, that's like to be expected. It's just like all these things keep adding up. The city keeps like adding more different kinds of taxes, whatever they can throw at you. It's like all of that is just like, obviously, one, it's not even financially viable anymore for me. But also it's like I don't even want to deal with those things anymore. Like, I've had to overcome so many challenges in 14 years that I'm just like exhausted with it. And if I can achieve my goal of like educating people more about their food and their food systems, and I can do it in a way that isn't so operationally heavy, that's what I'm trying to do. And the ways that the consumers interact with the product is like really different now also. We used to have these like super diehard local food people, who like love learning about the farmers, and there was more, I think, understanding and compassion around the local food system. And I'm not saying all my new customers are like this past post pandemic, but there is a different, like, I think the Amazons of the world have really changed what consumers expect. And like I was like trying to reference before, free delivery where you can deliver a product almost anywhere in this country overnight is now what we all expect. But it's not something realistic for most businesses to do. But we're expected to do that.
So was this a hard decision for you to, make this? Effectively, this is your baby. You've grown it for, 14 years and you developed it. Um, what was it hard for you to make that call?
I think I'm going to write about this because there's a lot of stages of closing down a company emotionally. There's like the acceptance of it and the deep sadness. Me especially, it's not just a business to me or even like a passion. It is like, was my life. It is my life. And I have such a strong connection to those customers and to our farmers. So I had a period of, once I decided to do this, I was very, very sad and nostalgic. I spent so much energy and time building this, and it's something I'm like so proud of. It's such a special thing to be able to do something like this. Like, I realized that I created my own food system, which sounds crazy. Like, who else gets to create their own food system? It's insane. So I had the sadness feeling, and then I had the like depression or sadness, a different kind of sadness. Like, oh my God, like, am I a failure? Did I just like not do a good job? And like, the reason why we're closing is because I couldn't figure it out. Will I be good at anything? What am I going to do now? And then there's the feelings of like, wait, I'm a badass because I did all this stuff. And like, that was really hard and people don't realize how hard it is. And they probably will never realize how hard it is. Um, and then there's also feelings now of excitement. Like, everything has its time and place. Like you're saying, like when I started this, I started it because this didn't exist anywhere in the world, this kind of business and this kind of job. And now that I've established that, and now that I have so much more knowledge in this field, now I can take all of that and move on to something else and innovate and create something else new. And that is also what I'm excited about. Like the idea of like constantly innovating, not just myself, but also innovating the industry is exciting to me.
it's a hard decision to close down a company that you've worked so hard for many years, and you've innovated and inspired, and people have grown to rely on. So for those founders, I always like to ask, or researchers or innovators or people out there that have been running something for years and are toying with, should I continue, or how do I know when the right time is to pivot or move on? What tips might you give them? Maybe you can throw out three tips.
Yeah, I think like don't let your ego come into it. I think a lot of people hold on to their businesses because of out of pride, or they just don't want to think they just didn't do a good job at something. Like if it's not serving you and you're not happy doing it anymore, it's just there's no point of doing it. You just close it. Um and I think it's also important to think about like what skill sets you have gained and enhanced through this job, through your business, because there is a world where some people are okay working for someone else. Like I'm not sure if I'm the best at that, but yeah, not everyone is. But some business owners are really good at that and actually don't like the pressure of making every single decision for themselves. So you just make a list of like, okay, these are all the tasks I would do in a day, and I must be pretty good at them if like a whole business was operating with me doing them. And that's a great way to like find your next part of life. And that makes it more okay, right, to close down your company of knowing that like there is another career path for yourself. Um, and I guess the third point is, yeah, like I really looked at close my business down as I really looked at the outline, the blueprint of what mattered the most to me. Like I would say like I don't need to be having the business where I'm ordering the food, talking to the farmers, packing the food, delivering the food, doing the customer service. Like I'm literally still the one like doing a lot of the deliveries, right? I'm still doing a lot of those things. I'm doing the social media. Like if my goal in the end, if my largest when you zoom out the most, and my goal is, I want people to have the knowledge or have a better way to get to have higher quality food. That's very wordy, but what is another way I can do that that is a little easier, that is a little cheaper, that can operate a little smoother, not that doesn't have like a million different moving parts. So I think you can still find joy in closing down your business, maybe starting something new, and maybe it can be a little easier, and you're still serving your mission, but it doesn't have to be specifically in the same exact way you were doing it.
That makes sense. Did you think about selling the business?
Yeah, I literally just don't know how to do that.
Okay, well, maybe there's somebody listening today that hears your story, and maybe you could share some insights so we can ask our guests and our listeners that if you guys have any idea on direction to share with Wen-Jay about how to sell her business, how could they reach out to you?
It would be great if they reached out to me on LinkedIn, or better yet, actually on Instagram. It's my first and last name, so it's WenJayYing. And yeah, I would love to hear people's stories about selling their business. Because like it is 14 years of building this up. That like anything I can not, I would like to hear stories about how to monetize that 14 years experience in ways that are ethical too, right? Because my customers are very important to me, and I would never want to lose that trust in them. So, what are like ethical ways?
Awesome. Wen-Jay, thank you so much for tuning in today and for sharing your stories. And we'll continue to follow you as you pivot and change and continue to educate and support your community.
Thank you, and thank you for wearing a logo with its pink color
I do my best.
and matching. Yeah.
Well, and want to thank our guests for tuning in today. We have our episodes here every Tuesday. They are new every week. If you're watching us on a videogram, you're probably watching us on YouTube, but do know that you can listen to us on a podcast wherever you listen to podcasts at Essential Ingredients. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram to hear clips and insights from our guests about what is coming up next. Our Instagram handle is at essential.ingredients. See you next week. Bye.